Hello everyone and welcome to our session titled Breaking Down Zero Trust. This talk is an outcome of a series of discussions John and I had about zero trust. We wanted to get to the heart of what zero trust is and what it is not. However, before we dive into the detail, let me hand over to John Spiegel, who's going to give us a little bit of background on the SSE Forum as well as its two hosts.
Let's start with the SSE Forum. If you're not aware of it, the SSE Forum is a vendor-neutral organization dedicated to bringing awareness of this new technology segment called the Security Service Edge. SSE is about modernizing both networking and security for the cloud era. Much like virtualization did for networking with software-defined networking and SD-WAN, we believe that we need to rethink how networking and security are delivered in the era of SaaS, AWS, and Azure. Thus, the SSE Forum. Our focus is to evangelize this technology, debate, and determine best practices for how to implement and operate the Security Service Edge from a practitioner's viewpoint. It's vendor neutral with the objective of being the tide that raises all the boats. Now about us. Jay Tilson and I have a combined 50 years of experience in operating enterprise networks and infrastructure. So we've sat in your very chair. We've been the persons making the hard decisions at 2 a.m. in the morning in the middle of an outage. We've also had the opportunity to advise several startups, as well as several of the major networking and security vendors out there. Earlier this year, we decided to join forces and create the SSE Forum, which is sponsored by Axis Security, who we both work for. One of the reasons Jay and I started the SSE Forum was to dispel myths. We've all heard it, and everywhere you turn, someone is touting zero trust magic fairy dust. And the story goes like this. It's time to upgrade to Zero Trust 3.0. Our competition is light years behind us with their Zero Trust 1.0 and 2.0 solutions. Those solutions don't scale. They don't inspect. They rely on firewalls and complex widgets, which are expensive and will cause your employees pain and discomfort. Please move to our 3.0 solution. It is filled with magical security dust, which can be a game changer for you and your company. And by implementing it, you will be a hero and get promoted. Unfortunately, once you scratch the surface, the reality is very different. Is there really a massive difference between 1, 2, and 3.0 Zero Trust? I think you'll find that the answer is 3.0 is really the same as 1 and 2. In some cases, it might be worse. So yeah, there's a lot of hype and confusion surrounding Zero Trust. This made Jay and I wonder, where did this start? And why do you need to consider Zero Trust as a solution? And what is it really? What are the benefits of this approach? The more we debated it, the more questions we had. So Jay and I decided to take a journey. We had to go to the source. So we searched out and contacted the founders of this movement to ask them what truly is Zero Trust. We wanted to pull back the curtain of marketing that has been put in front of us and determine what Zero Trust truly is and what it is not. We also wanted to understand why you would want to consider this strategy as your security mechanism going forward.
There is so much confusion in the industry about what zero trust is. Both myself and John really wanted to understand more, and we couldn't think of a better way than to discuss it with the founders, the people that have been there right from the beginning. We were very lucky that after approaching them, the founders of the Zero Trust movement agreed to be part of our podcast series, Breaking Down Zero Trust. Both myself and John really enjoyed our conversation. It was great to get information directly from that source. You can find the podcast series Breaking Down Zero Trust, as well as all of our other SSE Forum podcasts on our website or on Spotify or SoundCloud. Just search for SSE Forum. Okay, so here goes. Let's dive into what we learned from each one of the founders. First on our list was John Kindervag, who many believe is the father of zero trust. When we spoke to John, he said his hate of trust started when he was a network engineer. It all came about because of Cisco and the way they set trust levels on their interface on their PICs. He explained that Cisco used the term trust for each of their interfaces, with the internal interface having a trust level of a maximum of 100 and the external interface having an automatic trust level of 0. You didn't have to have a policy to move traffic from a higher trust level interface to a lower trust level interface, and John hated that. John believed that people were going to abuse this and use it to exfiltrate data. When John spoke to Cisco, they disagreed with him. But because of John's concern, he would put outbound policies in place, and this would get him into trouble as it really wasn't the way Cisco wanted it to be done. But ultimately, John was right. John then moved to Forrester in around 2008 and got paid to do research. He had freedom to research big topics, including his hatred of his hatred of trust. As part of John's role, he spent significant time interviewing a lot of the CISOs, and many of them commented that their security strategy was trust but verify. The view was that trust meant doing nothing to the packet, but to verify, people believed that it would be rude to do anything to the users as they were on the network. But John doesn't view that the users are on the network. He said that they have not shrunken down into subatomic particles and then been sent across the public internet to Zoom or Teams. He said that this doesn't even happen in the movies. John believed that instead of 100 and 0 as defaults for trust interfaces, the default should always be 0, and this really was the beginning of zero trust. John said for a long time zero trust was a little bit like Fight Club. Nobody talked about it. Many people who were doing zero trust were stopped by their legal and PR teams from talking about it, and this was really difficult for John. It was a massive iceberg, and the stuff you read and heard about was just the tip. So why did this change? John feels that things really kicked up a notch and started to change in 2016 when the list of spies was stolen from the US federal government. After this event, the US Congress did a massive study on the data breach and recommended that the Office of Personnel Management should mandate that all government agencies adopt zero trust, which was signed off earlier this year, 6 years later. When we asked how he felt about zero trust in today's world, John said he believes that zero trust is even more important in today's world, where data users' applications are everywhere. John commented that it doesn't matter where your environment is located, whether it's in the private or public cloud or in a data center, the control and protection should be based on what you are protecting. So the strategy is still very much valid today. When asked where people should start their journey, John gave a great answer. He said it doesn't matter where you start, it just matters that you start. If you're going to take a 1,000-mile journey, where does that 1,000-mile journey begin? He said with the first step. You may not even know where you are going, whether you're going north, south, east or west. But if you just stand there in the same place and never move, you will never reach your final destination. Next on our list was Dr. Chase Cunningham, also known as Dr. Zero Trust. When we asked Chase where he started, he said he started off as a diesel mechanic and a firefighter in the US Navy. The turning point for him was when he commandeered a laptop he wasn't supposed to have, reconfigured a piece of equipment he really shouldn't have been touching, and got found out for something that was really highly illegal. Instead of sending him to Leavenworth, the US Navy figured he might have some value and put him into the Triple Logic services. So it was really a calamity of errors in a group of people that thought they might get some use out of him that really pointed him to where he is today. When Chase left the Navy, he teamed up with John Kindervag, who he'd been friends with for a while. They worked on Hackers versus Executives, and Chase was the hacker. Chase commented that this was around 2013, and John had already been speaking about zero trust for a number of years, but not getting any interest. People just felt it was the next new thing, and so what? When we asked Chase what he felt the watershed moment was, he said it felt it was earlier this year when the President's executive order came out and said to the federal government, "Thou shalt adopt zero trust." He felt that the reason this matters is because whether we realise it or not, everyone subscribes to how the federal government deals with cybersecurity for a variety of reasons. The federal government are the ones who are actually engaged in conflict in cyberspace and are being targeted 1,000,000 times a day. So if they are doing something, then everyone should really follow suit. Normally what happens is the government does it, then big enterprises do it, and then medium and small companies follow. When Chase looks at Zero Trust, he never looks at it as an enterprise defender, as he always thought defense was comical as a red teamer. He has never found an enterprise whose defense was perfect. When he looks at it through the red teamer's perspective, he always thinks, if they did these things, my life would really suck. And that's when he really saw the value proposition of Zero Trust. It's not about being perfect with your defense. It's about removing what the adversary needs to be successful. When we asked Chase where you should start your Zero Trust journey, he explained that Zero Trust should fit in with your company's requirements. You have to do things within the limitations of your business, and you need to understand where your risks lie, where your real risks lie. You have to understand what has value to the attacker and not necessarily what has value to you. He said this is not about you, this is about what they want. He then went on to comment that he believes that the easiest thimble to boil is identity and access management. When you look at the data and statistics, the biggest thing out there are password reuse, compromised assets and logins, and lack of MFA. Those are the things that he feels people can really put in place easily today. He said that if you have a bad IM, then your whole system is flawed. We talked a little bit about Chase about educating the next generation. And Chase felt that we need to get away from everyone needing to be a security engineer. He commented that the kids today seem to understand the value proposition of security solutions, but only if they're integrated into what they do every day and that it solves a problem that they understand. Many of them already know how to use MFA on games, so we need to ensure that we add these levels of security to all the tools they are using. When we asked about the future, Chase said that the rising tide lifts all ships, and if you decide not to get on that tide, then it's going to be a really bad day for you. You will be that low-hanging fruit that can easily be picked and no one wants to be there. He said that companies that are taking on the Zero Trust initiatives now are not the ones that you're hearing about in the news. They are not the ones dealing with these mega breaches that we all hear about. Whereas the little folks who didn't think that anyone would care, they're the ones getting ripped apart by things like ransomware and phishing. The proof is really in the pudding. In today's world, any weakness in the supply chain and you're all likely potentially in trouble.
With Paul Simmons, we gain a new viewpoint into the Zero Trust movement. Paul's perspective is from the business side. He was a CISO for several large companies. Much like John Kindervag, Paul realized that security was a growing concern as he saw networks grow larger and more connected to the internet. But he also saw an opportunity. Greater connectivity equals more opportunities for companies to partner and not have to duplicate systems and applications. Paul was looking over the horizon. He saw the future of cloud and SaaS, but he also had a concern. At the time, much like John Kindervag, he viewed the firewall as a poor solution for security. He knew the future was not about building bigger walls. Rather, it was about tearing them down and opening up networks. As a result, he was one of the founding members of something called the Jericho Forum. Their objective was to bring about a new mechanism to deperimeterize security. This led to the Jericho Forum commandments, which provided a set of principles for companies to live by in this deperimeterized period. The 11 commandments focused on removing trust from IT systems. They provided a roadmap for John Kindervag and Chase Cunningham to quickly follow up on to what we now know as Zero Trust, the strategy. So according to Paul, What will zero trust do for your business and your bottom line? As C-level executives, these are the types of discussions people should be having. What a board will want to know about zero trust is, what is it going to save us in terms of money? And how are you going to de-risk the business? The nuts and bolts to them are irrelevant. Tell us what it will do for us, what is the cost, what we will save, and what the risk is. For Paul, zero trust is about how you enable the business to work faster and cheaper. He felt the biggest win for him was cross collaboration. Every business has a huge amount of collaborative working, joint ventures, third parties, frenemies. And really what this is about is enabling companies to collaborate securely. Think about all the items in an M&A, divestments, how they cause headaches. And the challenges and the opportunity is, as he sees it, is cross collaboration between 5 equal-sized partners. And how can we do this simply, securely, without introducing risk? How can I do it faster with low overhead? This is where he sees the value of a zero trust, enabling the business to work faster, more collaboratively, without sacrificing security. In other words, adopting zero trust for your company makes it more agile, flexible, and gives it an advantage on the competition. He cited the pandemic as one of those examples. Those companies which adopted open security fared much better than those that walled themselves off. What Paul Simmons brings us is the business imperative for zero trust. It's not only about security, it's about how your company will operate in this new century. Which leads us to the people aspect of zero trust. For this area, we interviewed artist, lawyer, author, CISO, and general Renaissance man, George Finney. George is currently the CISO for Southern Methodist University. He's also the author of several books on security and has a new book coming up called The Zero Trust Project. I believe this book will bring the concept of zero trust to the masses, much like the Phoenix Project did for the DevOps movement. In George's book, we're met with a protagonist who, on his first day, is confronted by a ransomware event. As the story plays out, we are provided with a roadmap on how to transform security for the modern era. Rather than focusing on the technical aspects, we dive deep into the human side of transformation. How do you create a team? How do you motivate them? Who should be on the team? And most importantly, how do you engage the entire enterprise in this transition? Ultimately, what George writes is, for your zero trust project to be successful, you need to engage the humans. Everyone in the company must be involved. This is no longer a security or an IT thing. It is everyone. So how do you do this? You need to both engage and entertain. By engage, you must have conversations with all types of the business. You must go from the top to the bottom. And you can't sit in your chair. You need to stand up, get up, and walk around your company. You need to meet people. You need to educate them. You need to engage them and get them involved. This is the way, says George. And by entertain, you need to make security and zero trust interesting. You need to make it provoking and ultimately personal. In his book, George has his characters creating engaging videos on why zero trust transition is important for the company's success. The key learning here is you must involve the entire enterprise in your effort to remake the security landscape. And if you don't, your project will not be successful, and ultimately you will not reach your goals. So the lesson is, don't discount the human side. Make sure to include it in your calculus as you map out your zero trust project.
Next on our list was Jim Rivas of the Cloud Security Alliance. Jim said to us that he'd always been interested in computers and was a bit of a tinkerer back in the 70s when he was a kid. When he graduated in 1997, he went off to sell PCs and then became involved in networking. He quickly understood that the problem at that time was connecting to the internet and how this created a big security problem, even if at the time the blast radius was really small. Jim then moved into consultancy before starting a dot-com startup in 1998. That made him love entrepreneurial stuff, which led him to doing more advisory work. He then joined the Information Security Systems Association, which he ended up running, and it was that combination of being an entrepreneur and advisor that led him to starting the Cloud Security Alliance. He said that the Cloud Security Alliance was all about sharing, cooperating, and trying to create a higher baseline of security for everyone. Jim realised in 2008-2009 that cloud was going to be the next big thing, and he started building best practices back then. He had seen how quickly people could take an idea and instead of getting 100 computers, they could build it in the cloud. Jim thought people would move overnight, but he didn't think about the long tail of legacy computing. To him, using something like a service just felt so obvious. He felt that using it on demand like you would a light is just how we were going to do computing. Jim said that the CSA have always tried to stay leading edge and trying to keep up with trends, and he felt that the pandemic and the move to working from home had a real big catalyst on them focusing more and more on zero trust. They saw so many organisations with great security models and architectures really struggle going 100% virtual because they had assumed that everything would really remain on-prem. Jim believed this led to a lot of people to go back and rediscover what John Kindevag and Paul Simmons had been talking about with zero trust, and they really didn't understand how it to manifest itself practically and what they should be doing. Jim commented that zero trust should really be seen as a philosophy instead of guiding principles. What they want to do at the CSA is help clear up this confusion by providing education and a resource centre that curates all of the resources that exist today. They are also looking at doing a certification of zero trust knowledge. They really want to arm people to make a difference and help people implement zero trust within their organisations. They want to teach people how to think about zero trust, knowing that the technology is likely to change quite a bit, but there is best technology that's available today. Both John and Paul are on board to assist with this, as well as hundreds of more people. Applications and data are now all over the world in every nook and cranny, and users are now outside that old castle in moat. We really need a strategy to secure this new world, and business leaders need to be trained. The CSA has a group called the CXO Trust that brings together the boards of businesses to discuss cybersecurity. The CSA believe that education is critical for people at the C-level, and the first part of understanding where people's pain points are. The sins of the past are really now part of the issue of today. We used to just get things working, but now we need to look at security at every level in every project to make a business run better. People need to have the mindset that everyone is out there to get them. And we won't get anywhere unless we focus on hardening things down. If we just try and harden technology we have today, we will fail. We just won't get to where we need to be. We won't embed security in businesses. We need to acknowledge it that this isn't just a technology problem, but it's also a people problem. There is some education that needs to be done at all levels of businesses, and now is the time for change. So what did we learn? It all started with John Kindevag's hatred of trust, way back before he started at Forrester, when he was a network engineer, and really all because of Cisco. This led John to getting a job at Forrester, researching his hate for trust, speaking to hundreds of CISOs, and then coining the term back in 2008. It became clear to us that zero trust is a philosophy and not a strategy. It's about never trusting, but always verifying. We also learnt that for many years, zero trust was just like Fight Club. Nobody talked about it. But this changed with the executive order and with the pandemic. The world is a different place now, but zero trust is just as important in this new world as it ever was before. In fact, even more so with data, users and applications now being everywhere. When we asked people where we should start, John said the key thing is just to start, and the others agreed. Chase added that he believes IDP is a good place to start, being as it's the easiest symbol of water to boil. Paul, George and Jim added that knowing your business is critical. This is not just about technology, this is about people. And you need to meet the business appetite for risk. Everyone we spoke to agreed that this battle is a large one. That is a difficult battle to win. The enemy is large. And we need everyone to be part of this battle, and we need to be able to win together. This means we need to educate not just IT and security teams, but everyone. We also learned that if you want to get into security, then curiosity and passion are key. It's a hard arena to work in. You must really find something you enjoy and focus on that. The information available is currently limited, but many folks are trying to help educate people, including us at the SSE Forum. So things will become a lot easier over the next few years.
Dovetailing off Jaye's conclusions, what I learned from the Mount Rushmore of Zero Trust is that it is not just a security concept. The conversation with Paul Simmons to me was an eye-opener. I had never considered Zero Trust as a business enabler. Yet Paul and the Jericho Forum had the foresight to see far over the horizon. They realized well before anyone that IT had a massive issue with security. They realized the solutions of today were not going to work for the future. They realized for business to be successful in the upcoming era of cloud and SaaS, that deperimeterization was the path forward. They advocated for a concept which John Kindervag popularized as Zero Trust several years later. As a result, as you consider your own Zero Trust journey, do not think of it as an IT project. It is truly a business project. The business must be engaged. They must understand the business outcomes which will be available once the project has reached maturity. Zero Trust is a business imperative for the modern era. And similarly, George Finney also reminds us not to discount the human side. Keep this front and center. We, as IT leaders, cannot sit in our chairs. We must spend time listening, understanding, as well as promoting the Zero Trust agenda. We must engage the entire enterprise to be successful. If we don't, we risk peril on our journey.
We would like to thank everyone for listening to this session today. As I said before, we'd also really like to thank everyone that was involved in our podcast series, Breaking Down Zero Trust. We really can't do them justice in this short presentation. If you'd like more information or you'd like to listen to the full interviews, then please pop over to www.sseforum.io and also pop onto LinkedIn and give our page a follow. Thanks again for today.